All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We always like to ground the learning that we do for into the promise of community action. And so what we like to ask for people to do is to just take a pause and think through this and recite it as we jump into our content for today. So the promise of community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. So our agenda for today, I'm going to go through just some introductory information, a little bit about the learning community, and then we're going to jump into our national webinar content for today. So we're going to be talking about the family-centered coaching approach. The prosperity agenda out of Washington State is going to be presenting for us today. And they're going to be talking about the Savings Initiative as one of the projects that they have done that's related to service integration, as well as their family-centered coaching approach. Then we're going to have some question and answer. And of course, like I mentioned in the beginning, please type in your questions in the chat box anytime throughout the webinar today so that we can start collecting those. And then as the presenters might pause for questions throughout their webinar presentation today, we can also address them as they kind of come in. And then finally, we'll do some wrap up and let you know any upcoming webinars and where our resources are. So this webinar really comes out of our learning community. And so we like to let everyone know a little bit of information about this as we get started with our content. And so the purpose of our Learning Communities Resource Center is really to analyze community action outcomes and also identify those effective, innovative, and promising practices that are across the network in community action as well as across the field of human services and the work that we do, all in an effort to build the capacity to fight poverty across the communities that we serve. So our work is also grounded in this national community action theory of change. And you can see at the top kind of our three main network goals focused on families and communities throughout the nation. In general, the types of services and strategies that community action operates, and then also, of course, the core principles and the performance management framework. So this is kind of our common thread throughout the whole national network. Within our learning community, we have lots of different topics that we rotate each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And today we're focusing on integrated services to improve impact. So I know that we have several on the line from our integrated services learning community group. And we welcome the rest of you throughout the nation that are joining us today for this national webinar event to learn with this learning community. We definitely wrap in different types of components to our framework for the learning community. And a few of these are mentioned here on your screen, family-centered coaching being one of those. It really hits a lot of our different learning community topics, such as service integration, as well as the whole family approach. And then you'll see lots of others on here, such as racial equity, trauma-informed care, of course, the data aspects of things. And so these are really reflected throughout many of our different learning community groups that we like to bring to light through these different webinar topics. So our learning community is made up of many across the nation. All 11 regions are represented within the learning community. That represents also 33 states and over 400 counties. So what we kind of like to say that we work towards is small actions, lots of people for big change, and we're happy that you are here to be a part of that. Of course, none of this would be possible without our learning community team working behind the scenes. And so, like I mentioned earlier, I'm Courtney Kohler. I'm a senior associate with the National Community Action Partnership, work on the training and technical assistance team. And our project director, Tiffany Marley. We also have program associate Hyacinth McKinley, Liza Porras as a program associate. We have Charity Frankowski on our team, as well as Gerald Crocker as our director of TNTA. And then we have Jeannie Chapman, who is a consultant for our Community Action Economic Mobility Initiative. So at this time, with no further ado, we'll go ahead and turn it over to our webinar presenters today. So we're excited to have the Prosperity Agenda, or TPA, with us to present about this. Rachel Brooks is going to start us off. She's the Director of the Prosperity Agenda Solutions. And so I will go ahead and pass the presenter over to you all, and you can present us with your information.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting us to join you in this group today. We're very excited to talk to you about a little bit about our work at the Prosperity Agenda. I'll just take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Rachel Brooks. I'm the Director of TPA Solutions, which is a part of our work at the Prosperity Agenda that seeks to scale the work that we're designing. And later we'll be joined by Alicia Atkinson, who is the Director of our Innovation Lab, where all of our work is developed in partnership with many community action partners, as well as the communities that they're working in, the families that you're all partnering with. Today we're going to talk about a couple different things that we have been working on. We want to tell you a little bit about our process as a whole to partner to design solutions for scale. And then we're going to focus in on two different parts of our work. One is family-centered coaching, which is an approach that we've worked very closely with Kellogg Foundation on, and they gave us management of that project to be able to scale it nationally. We're working with several community action partners to bring that approach and integrate that into your work. We're also going to talk about the Savings Initiative pilot, and then talk to one of the partners that we've worked really closely with to research and test the prototype that came out of that, and then hopefully have a lot of time for questions and answers. I'm really glad that we have, you know, a relatively small group here that we can have a good discussion around. So I want to start by talking a little bit about who we are and the kind of work that we do. We are based in Seattle, but we work nationally with partners, and our process that Alicia is going to take you a little bit through is really based on families driving the work that we do, setting the goals for the work that we do, and being the primary source of knowledge, because we know that they are the experts in their own lives, and that when we design based off the information and experience that we hear from parents and in communities, we know that we're developing solutions that are really optimized for their experience. Where possible, we try and challenge the status quo where its norms are harmful to families, so that paramount to us is that we are not adding to layers and systems that are not serving families. And we really then focus on place-based partners to be able to bring those solutions to scale through your own awareness and experience with your own communities. One of the first things that we're going to talk about is family-centered coaching. We're not going to go into as much detail as we often do in webinars, but I want to make sure that you know that there are other webinars that we've recorded and other resources where you can find out much more about family-centered coaching. Earlier in the year, we did a webinar with community action partners, the national work, to be able to present family-centered coaching as a whole. And maybe I can find a link to that I can share with you in the Q&A. You can also go to the prosperityagenda.org. You can go to our YouTube page or our Facebook page or our site, and you can find recordings of previous webinars we've done where we've gone to much more detail about that approach and its development and its practice, and actually hear from coaches to really talk about that experience. But today I want to talk a little bit about the process of the development of family-centered coaching and how it can drive, I think, deeper integrative practice. So this approach was developed by the Kellogg Foundation, a longtime partner of ours, and it integrated experiences and research around coaching from around the country to be able to identify a solution to a gap that was identified through the field. So Kellogg, in all of its extensive work around two-generation family work was seeing that while there was really strong coaching going on, there was this opportunity to develop a coaching approach that was truly family-centered and that would approach families from beginning to end to really integrate their experience and to identify their goals. And that there was demand to be able to build something that was free to access and free to share among partners too, so that you could really integrate this with other partners without having to be concerned that there was some kind of proprietary license. So all of that material is available to download and use, and allows for an adaptable process so that it could be used in lots of different kinds of work depending on what the goals of your program are. It really was leveraging off this emerging two-generation field, focused on the whole family, and really pulled from research that pointed to strategies that was really working with families. But there was something else that was really critical to Kellogg, and that was to really integrate a racial equity lens, so that this approach was building off the journeys that a lot of organizations are on to better understand individual bias, to better understand how programs might be built on structures that were not serving people in an equitable way, and on broader systems in that same way. But to also apply, all the great learning that has come out of behavioral economics and trauma-informed care and our understanding about, the human experience of our executive function skills and the strengths and challenges that we all experience. And thankfully, there's been really great increasing evidence to show that coaching is just really effective with families. This family-centered coaching journey started in 2016 with the Kellogg Foundation identifying this gap and working with some really talented consultants in different fields, from workforce development to early learning to the coaching approach and financial capability, but also really a vast amount of expertise from advisors from a lot of different networks and content experts in lots of different areas, and a lot of testing through the STEPS partners that are around the country to be able to really build this beautiful approach to being able to work with families in this materials. They went through a testing process with those STEP sites and also some of the sites that are part of the Rural Impact Group, and then we were selected to be able to take that into our hands and carry it forward last year. I want to talk a little bit sort of philosophically about this approach, because it really is based in feedback that was gathered about what people's experience was in working with families. And we were really appreciated our ability to be able to work with those STEPS partners to talk to them about why they were willing to invest resources in this. And we asked them, what was that process? Why move to this approach? There's so many different approaches out there. There's lots of different things that people are already trying. So why take this on? And what we heard was that they felt like their communities were not getting the outcomes they needed for folks to really be able to thrive, that they were investing a lot of the same resources and just not seeing the results that they'd hoped for. And that in terms of integration, they felt like the number of services that a family has to navigate is just overwhelming and not and can inhibit those outcomes that people are seeking. And somebody told me that they felt like they'd been learning the best practices, they'd been measuring all the most important things, and that it just felt like something was still missing. And broadly speaking, this ability to be able to really build meaningful partnerships with families is what we heard was really driving this desire to be able to bring this approach. And what this approach does is be able to, really meet families where they are. I think it's a term that it's a phrase that we often hear now about meeting families where they are, and I always wonder what that means to people. Like what does that actually look like to you? And for a lot of the partners we've talked to with family-centered coaching, it means being able to shift with families to what they need in the moment. So, there's very traditional approaches to case management or navigation. There's really pure approaches to coaching. And if you look over on the left side of this little circle that has case management and readiness assessment or motivational interviewing and goal setting, what that's really about is working with permission with the family to say, what do you need today? And maybe today somebody has something that's really threatening, an eviction notice or a health problem with their child, and you can say to a family, look, let's deal with that. Is that what you want to do with our time today? And then we can shift to a goal-setting conversation when we've resolved that crisis. Or to be able to say, look, do you want to keep moving with this goal-setting conversation even though this crisis is also happening? And really letting the family say what they want to accomplish, and honestly, maybe even in the same day. And that was a really interesting conversation to have with a lot of practitioners, that it's not always a pure case management or pure coaching, that it really is about staying with families through that process, and that this really aligned with a lot of people's practice that they were already doing, and that what family-centered coaching did was just provide some structure around that, of how do you identify your role depending on where the family is, and work with the family to do that in a way that is strength-based and that is permission-based. The other part of this was about having a process that, and again, it's a little bit of jargon again, is this idea of being moving from the transactional to the transformational. How do you have a conversation where you can really bring coaching into a relationship, even if the interactions you're having with people might be very transactional? It might be about some emergency assistance. It might be that, there's just something that someone's coming back to you for. But, what we often hear from partners, of course, is that they don't want to just be providing the same transaction over and over again and not being able to grow that relationship and grow those outcomes. So this is a way of saying what we heard from partners is that, that original conversation will include a conversation about the family, who's in the family, and what are the goals, even if that's just a small part of the conversation, and then weaving that into every conversation you have with the families. And our partners telling us that they're really seeing, that relationship grow towards a much bigger goal-setting conversation. And then the third part about integrating a whole family approach, that it's not just about taking the external process with families, but really bringing that into an organization to really collaborate and integrate, a coaching approach on a deeper level. Those values of putting families first and making sure that they're really honored, and really exploring, again, how individual bias and systemic racism are in some ways really embedded in historically in a lot of our programs and services, and how can we really have the conversations and to really ensure that that's not limiting the outcomes that we hope for with in the communities that we're working in. And then this all comes together in these 6 steps to family-centered coaching. I'll just go really quickly through this process. This first part, and again, you can go to familycenteredcoaching.org to see all of this content, download it, use it, adapt it. It's there to be as a resource for you, but really building in a process that would allow any organization to integrate this into your work. So it has prepare for the meeting, and that's really about how do you really build an environment influenced by trauma-informed care and influenced by your own boundaries and your own need to be able to be present as a coach before you go into a family experience with people. The second part about building the relationship has a couple simple but really critical changes into it. There's a form called Who's in My Family that is about, before you do any work with a family, just asking them to define who their family is, and then maybe being able to expand on that into some critical questions about who's there for them and who are they supporting, to understand who's in that family and what that structure is, and also just let them guide what their family looks like at that moment, and then to ask them a little bit about their hopes and dreams for themselves, for their children, and for their family as a whole. And so that's a brief process that can really change the tone and path of a conversation and relationship with a family. We highlighted this wheel of life because it's really critical to coaching. It's a really effective and simple tool for being able to get an understanding from a family of where they're seeing opportunities and challenges. So it's a very simple process to really transform a conversation into a coaching conversation that allows the family to self-assess where they see challenges in any one of these areas. And just really quickly and visually being able to mark where they see, say, between 0 and 5, their satisfaction in any one of these areas. And I think, though this might look like a lot of different areas of life, that it might seem like a lot to take on conversations about everything from financial capability to basic needs. But really, this is about having a conversation about these things and not trying to solve any of these challenges. But I will say that the Family-Centered Coaching Toolkit comes with content modules for each one of these areas, so that if the parent does want to take some steps around this, there's some basic directions that you can help with people and the partnerships that you already have. But a lot of what this does, as step 3 is called, is focus your work, so that the parent is telling you, like, look, my legal challenges right now are the biggest challenge in my life, and I would put that at a 1, whereas the rest of these things, it may look on paper like that's not going well, but to me, that feels like it's not as big of a challenge. And then when you go into the goal setting process, this gives some guidance to be able to say, you know, where do you want to set some goals? And the parent might be able to look at this wheel and say, well, this is the biggest challenge. This is what would drive change in a lot of different areas. That assessing stages of change is really about the coach being able to identify the best role they could take for where that family or that parent is at to be able to help progress change in that area. You know, it could be that that's a very early part of change around just starting to wonder what change might look like. It could be that they're really far down the line and wanting to set goals now. Plan, Do, Review is just a really straightforward goal setting tool for coaching, and support and accountability is about working with a family to understand how are we going to keep this going. You know, who's somebody that's an accountability partner for you, or how can I be that to keep this going? And I won't say that this process is linear. It could be step 1, 2, 3, back to 2, forward to 6, but it just really provides a really simple way to do that. Again, there's so much great information about all of these tools, and so I would really encourage people to go to our website, or I'll share a link here where you can look at the community action website that we did, the community action webinar that we did earlier this year. And you can hear more from our coaching trainer and other partners who've had experience with this, and we can ask our partner a little bit later about this as well. But I think, you know, what we really wanted to do today was talk a little bit about what was it like to think about this process and build out a tool that really addressed in a really broad way how you could have a more meaningful partnership with families. What I'll also say about coaching is that because it is fundamentally based on listening, that it has a really comprehensive way of changing the way that you build programs, the way that you work with families, because you are always hearing from families directly what's important to them, what their goals are, and what they identify as the challenges. And that's really fundamental to our work. We really start there. We really start with hearing from people what success looks like to them, and really building things that respond to that. So having a coaching approach really broadly can really help guide work, because you're just hearing from people all the time and what their experience is. There are some great resources. You can go and download these tools. There's a great readiness assessment that you can complete in about 5 minutes to be able to look at where you think your organization is at in terms of being ready for a coaching approach or for a whole family approach. And there's a little schedule there if you want to have a further chat with me to learn a little bit of what it looks like to ramp up a family-centered coaching approach. I would be very happy to hear from you. I'm going to turn it over now, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later in the Q&A and with our guest that we've invited from Longview, Washington. But right now I'm going to turn it over to Alicia, who's going to tell you about something that we developed at the Prosperity Agenda.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. As Rachel said, I'm the director of the Innovation Lab at the Prosperity Agenda, and I manage and direct all of our design work where we develop our programs, mainly focused on two areas around career readiness and financial wellness. Today, I'm going to dive deep into a human-centered design process that we went through to develop a savings project. And we want to highlight that this was, we find a lot of value in this process and related to integrating services. I'll walk through our process a little bit, who our partners were, but this was a project focused on the Temporary Assistance for Needy Family program in Washington State, and really wanting to integrate a financial wellness savings component into that workforce development program. We also have a two-generation lens to this project, really kind of in line with what Rachel just shared, really realizing that families come to the table as whole people, and wanted to make sure that we kept that in mind as we went through our development process. So very briefly, I'll walk through kind of our Innovation Lab process. And this is really going to be the material that I share with you today about the savings pilot. But we always start with a question. We frame the challenge at the beginning. We don't go in with any assumptions or assume solutions to the problem, but we really just go in with questions to more deeply understand people's experiences around the problem. We go and have conversations with parents, with staff, to gather insights and context to make our solution as relevant, as impactful as possible in these different environments. We then build these tools called personas, and we build an evaluation system, all about making sure that we're kind of synthesizing what we learn from these conversations, and to make sure that when we go into design and we go into generating ideas and we go into generating solutions around these problems or these needs, that we're keeping the parent voice at the forefront of our minds in that process. We then go and build prototypes, and then we spend a lot of time testing and refining our solution that we came up with. So that might have just seemed like a lot of jargon, but I'm going to walk through this process and hopefully make it a little bit more real, and also just encourage you all that there is some simplicity to this. Really, it starts with going to ask questions to your communities and to the families you serve about what is most important with them. In this way, we consider this a design process. We also consider coaching as a tool, to start digging deeper, as Rachel was alluding to getting to know your families and your communities better by starting with questions. So we hold our questions at the beginning very near and dear to our heart. So, so as I just alluded to, we start every project with a question, and this was the question we started with for this project. For a little bit of context, this is a project that's been funded by the Kellogg Foundation. It's a 3-year project. We're about a little over a year and a half into the project as of now. And I'll say, we wanted to make sure that we focused on savings, knowing that savings is a key indicator of financial security and stability, and really a pathway out of poverty for many families, but wanted to frame not just savings behaviors, but also thinking about resilience on a whole, and kind of broadening our look a little bit about, how are parents, how are families thinking about resilience, thinking that savings was going to be one of those things they'll talk about, but that there could potentially be other ways that people will think about their resilience as well. We focused our design through by talking to parents in the Community Jobs Program, which is a transitional jobs program in the TANF program in Washington State. It's a 6-month transitional job program, and it just means that parents are connected to a job site while they're getting a TANF benefit. And our partner at the end can probably talk more about what that program is, as she manages one. But again, these parents are experiencing some pretty high levels of insecurity, do not have a lot of income to save. So again, a very vulnerable population that we are going in to talk to. And as I mentioned, we took a lens of wanting to consider a two-generation approach, knowing that for families, their children are often a huge amount of inspiration for them to save, to create stability in their life, and also knowing that parents are a huge lever around starting to talk about money with their kids. There's a lot of data and information out there about financial socialization and how even by the age of 2 or 3 that education starts and is filtering through to children. So we wanted to explore kind of what that relationship looks like and how we can ignite in families what's already happening. So in our insight and context gathering phase, we went out and we talked to a lot of people. So I mentioned, we focused on the community jobs program. We talked to a lot of staff in these programs. We know that, through this project, through other projects, that we have to make sure that we're optimizing not only for the parents' experience, but for the staff experience, understanding their constraints, understanding their challenges, understanding their comfort when it comes to money, and what they're already doing and how can we build on what's already working for them and what can we work on and kind of alleviating some of the pain points they have. We also talked to a lot of parents, so we worked with about 3 community job sites around the state to go and have multiple focus groups with, 4 sites, and went around and talked to a lot of parents about how do they think about their financial futures, how are they feeling about them, what would help them reach their financial goals, what are those goals, how do they think about those goals, and also how do they talk to their kids about money and savings, and what do those conversations look like, what challenges do they have with those conversations. We also talked to some staff at the Department of Commerce and the Department DSHS, which are the administrators of this program. We also were able to sit in and observe some of the financial education classes that already were happening, so we didn't duplicate services, but rather, wanted to add value to, if people were already delivering some financial education, how can we coordinate and make sure that we're integrating well into what's already happening. And then we also always do some secondary research, talking to some experts in the field and learning what's already out there and what we can build upon. So I'll trying to summarize a lot of work in a few bullets here, but I wanted to offer up a few thoughts of what really inspired us when we went and designed kind of this new program, new intervention. So first is, savings is not always money in the bank. I think I alluded to this earlier on, but really wanted to start acknowledging that the families in these economic situations have a lot of resiliency and have a lot of behaviors that might not always lead to additional money in their bank account, but do lead to resiliency and potentially once they're out of this program and have a little bit more money in their budget, they're able to save. So I'll give you a few examples of this. A couple of families we talked to pay down money on a utility bill, so because they know that during certain times of the year that bill spikes, and so they kind of do a consistent, sometimes overpay on that because that's a source of stress for them during the winter months. So that's something they do. Some purchase an extra household item. So we talked to one woman who we kind of now coin a diaper savings account. So we'll actually go out and when they have a little extra money, we'll spend a lot on one household item that causes their, again, that stress and creates some comfort in knowing that if they don't have money for next month, that they'll have this item in their household. A lot save gift cards that they'll get. Some participate in lending circles with family or friends. Some are paying down debt. So again, a behavior that is technically savings and increasing money in the bank, but is a behavior that, is that forward long-term thinking, increases resiliency. I'll quickly say too that there was a lot of mention too of kind of the social connection and kind of resiliency that people find in communities. So we talked to many people who say, I watch my friend's kids and I'm able to do laundry at her house while I watch her kids. Again, we heard a couple stories of, I may show up late to work because I'm driving my neighbor's uncle to a doctor's appointment, but that's because my neighbor's uncle fixes my car when it breaks down. And so there's a lot of kind of sharing of services that's going around in these communities that build, again, a lot of resiliency and ability to respond to financial shocks in a different way. The second insight I wanted to share was this, just the language we often use in the financial capability, financial wellness world. So a lot of our question, just got a note that we lost audio, not sure.
Courtney, do you want to confirm whether you can hear us?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay. We'll keep going. We'll see if we get any other reports.
Okay, I'll troubleshoot with her. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So the other insight I just want to say is sometimes when you ask a question, for example, if we ask the question, do you budget? And a lot of parents say, no, I don't budget. And often that's because that is a stressful process for them. They'll come out in the red every single month. But when we ask them if they have a plan, how do they approach each month? They say, I know what bills I pay first. I know what bills I pay second. I know it can wait a couple days. And so the insight we just wanted to make sure we underlined here was that, our questions matter and matter for what type of information that we're gathering and what kind of successes we're either seeing or not seeing with these families. So that's something that very much informed our thinking. And then the last one was just that, parents really are talking to their children about money and making choices. There was this balance between, I don't want to burden my children with, our money problems, but I do want to make them aware of the value of money. People talk about, executive functioning, not using that language, but around choices. I give my children a choice. Do you want to go to the roller derby for your birthday, or do you want to go and have a birthday party with many friends, or just go to the roller derby with a few friends? And we were very much inspired by just the sophistication. There was this one parent who talked about whenever they went to the grocery store, they actually pointed out the frozen gummies, the frozen Disney gummies versus the regular store brand gummies, and talked about marketing and the impact of marketing. So there's just a lot of great conversations already happening, and we want to make sure that whatever we developed continued those conversations, and again, maybe helps parents who weren't quite sure how to start those conversations, help them start, having those conversations with their children. So we really started breaking down from these conversations with parents all the things that could impact someone's ability to build this resilience, to build these savings behaviors in their life. And as you can see, it's a lot more expansive than just putting money in the bank account. So we wanted to think about, goal setting, goal attaining, the desire to save, the believing I can save, the seeing someone who's in my same financial situation saving. This idea of intentional spending, resisting spending temptations, which is really closely related to the social and cultural pressure to spend. I think this keeping up with the Joneses, we kind of live in a society that celebrates spending and not saving, so really wanting to push against those ways that we think about spending money in our society. We also talked a lot about decision fatigue, so the idea of the number of decisions you make during a day, you're probably not going to make the best decision for your future, 5 o'clock driving home from work if you don't have a plan for dinner that day. I think that's something we can all identify with. We also talked about just the social support to save, and also having a savings account. So really wanting to think about all these different dynamics that build into someone's ability to save or kind of start building this resiliency in their life. So with all that information, what we ended up building were these products that we are calling Money PowerUp Packs. These are event kits that actually we have developed to send to different programs that are interested in integrating a financial capability or wellness component into their workforce development program. So it's supposed to be very easy and engaging. We're really, all of these events are about building community, celebrating the progress that people already doing in their financial lives, kind of all the bright spots I was just alluding to, and really want to create memorable experiences with talking about money. Something I didn't highlight in kind of our insight and context gathering phase was the staff perspective as well. And I just want to share that, from talking to staff, I alluded to that these staff are very, very busy. They want to do more program around financial, but also, don't have the time and space to really develop a curriculum around this. And we also heard from staff that, they're not always sure about finances themselves. These are individuals that maybe are really scared to, give the wrong financial advice. What if they give them their clients or participants advice that gets them into worse trouble? So we did do a lot of deep diving just into the staff experience as well of offering these services, and so really wanted to package up this curriculum to make it easy for staff and facilitators to use as well. We want to show that, that these are organizations who talk about money because it's not taboo. It's not meaning to be full of shame, but it's something that we can all have fun doing. We want to talk about what's working, what are people doing to save, to build resiliency, and how can we all get better at it. We want to create this meaningful dialogue at the office and at home as a family. And we just really want to acknowledge that, across cultures, across different families, this resiliency might look different for different families. And, I'll say, as much as this isn't, a coaching curriculum, I would consider it's very much informed by the coaching methodology of really asking questions and engaging folks in a conversation to make it as relevant for them in their own lives. And yes. So I'm going to walk through a little bit more of kind of what this all looks like. So in each event kit, we have an overview of what that event is about. We have objectives of what's in the event kit. We have banners, flyers, posters. We really wanted to make this feel like a different experience. We have a community brainstorm board. We have email templates that invite people to this event 30 days out and then 15 days out. And then has a thank you email after people come. So really trying to create this different experience of a lot of people who are in this TANF programming in Washington State. We have a facilitator guide and checklist, and there are also stickers for each pack that we actually send home with each parent that has take-home activities that are age-specific for different age groups in both Spanish and English. So I'll deep dive into one of the packs in a second, but I'll explain kind of a little more about what those take-home activities look like. We also have the day of event activities. So each pack comes with about a 90-minute activity that you can facilitate with parents at your workforce development site. And then as well as a USB drive that has a PowerPoint and some digital copies of additional material. So this is all packaged in one box that makes it easy to use and to facilitate. So, as I mentioned, I'll deep dive into one of these, but we currently have 8 that we're testing across Washington State right now. One of the first ones we developed is that purple one that is kind of half a heart, half a brain, and that pack is called Heart and Brain Day, and it's our play on kind of the wants and needs discussions that you often hear in financial education programs. We heard a lot about kind of, sitting in these classes and hearing from parents that, your wants are bad and your needs are good, and you should only want your wants and you shouldn't want your needs, and just a lot of, I will say, kind of shame and this guilt that people felt for kind of wanting things beyond their basic needs. And so we developed this pack really to kind of push up against that mentality. So it includes a game that you play that has people respond to different questions, and you flip a coin and you actually respond either with your heart or with your brain. And so one of the questions is like, oh, if you found $20 on the ground, what would your heart do? What would your brain do? And it's really just to say, neither are bad or good. It's just that we have awareness that both of those different parts exist in us. and how can we kind of make those decisions more consciously and really, you know, moving through the world with that awareness that both of those exist. Some of the take-home activities on that were actually completely inspired by a few stories we heard from parents. So one of them is actually called Heart and Brain Pep Talk. And so you actually have a pep talk with your kids before you walk into a grocery store about, you know, you put actually a heart or a brain sticker on them, and you say, you know, today we're only shopping with our brains, which means we're only shopping for our needs. And then, you know, after maybe 4 or 5 weeks, you can give them a heart sticker and say, okay, today we're shopping with our hearts, and give them $1 to choose a you know, snack. And this is really inspired by a lot of, you know, parents have a lot of fatigue about going to a grocery store with their children, just kind of constantly having to say no. And so we wanted to give them a tool to say, you know, you can have this pre-talk, this kind of pep talk. And this was something a parent shared with us that they already do. And so, you know, now we've just tried to formalize it and share it with other parents. I'm going to briefly share, we've been testing these packs pretty much over the last year. And so wanted to just share a little bit about what we've heard so far from the testing, and then we'll have an opportunity to talk to one of our partners as well and hear a little bit about her experience. But want to just emphasize, you know, these PowerUp Packs have a strength-based approach. You know, one person said, I really like these because people won't feel told what to do. So much of their lives they're being told what to do, but this is an experience I'll get to develop their own feelings and decisions about. We also require no training for this. So this is a kind of kind of like a Birchbox or a all-inclusive kit, if you will, sending this out to different programs to try, which we did want to make sure we designed around just recognizing that there is a lot of training demands on a lot of people's time and didn't want to have to require training. So all of these can be facilitated without training. We wanted to build on success, so that was, you know, one of our principles of these packs, but really wanting to start acknowledging what people are doing. I didn't mention this in our kind of insight and context gathering, but a lot of people are saving change. That is something they do with their kids. They set their change aside. That is pretty much, some of the families, that's the only way they save money every month. And a lot of parents reported that as kind of a shameful thing. You know, I only save the change in my purse, you know, but really wanting to say, you know, if that's a place to start, you know, using that coaching mentality of, you know, building on success is the way to go. So we really wanted to emphasize that, you know, this isn't just about, you know, saving up to, you know, thousands of dollars, but really just making those small successes and building on that progress. When we talk about integration, you know, one of the things we've seen through testing this is that, you know, staff has really started to see this importance of a 2-generation approach. And actually, again, having that experience where they're thinking about other programming they're offering and how can they kind of integrate more, you know, school activities or children into their approach. So again, that's been a great thing to see. And then lastly, just really want to emphasize, I know there's a lot of research out there now about kind of the importance of social connection and the power of groups for people who are experiencing insecurity. And we've just seen a lot of great experiences around kind of sourcing the wisdom of the group, really saying, you know, I'm not the expert, I'm not going to tell you, I have some information and we're going to learn from each other, and really kind of ignite that wisdom of the group and that social connection. We did have a facilitator actually report a few weeks ago that, you know, they did one of the packs and actually saw for the first time in a long time some parents exchange numbers with each other to be able to connect outside of class, and he just reflected that, you know, he hadn't seen that in a couple of years, and so it had really, it was just really a great success for him to have, you know, been a part of facilitating that. So I'm, you know, happy to talk a little bit more about the different packs. I know I kind of just talked about one. I'm happy to talk more about our process in the Q&A, but I believe now we're going to throw it over to, I'm going to pass it back to Rachel, who's going to facilitate a conversation with Liz Minty, who was a design partner on this project and is currently testing these PowerUp Packs in her programming.
Thank you very much, Alicia. I am so glad to bring Liz into this conversation. I'm going to try and get her a moment to unmute from a different location in Longview, Washington. You know, Lower Columbia CAP has really been one of our go-to partners for a long time in coaching and now in our design process. Hello, Liz. Let me just give you a moment to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role and about Lower Columbia CAP.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm assuming you can hear me, and if you can't, let me know. Good. We are suffering. I don't know if any of you around the country are. Apparently, Comcast is having some issues with phone service around the country today, and of course our work phone. So I am reporting in on a cell phone, so I apologize for the quality. As I've been introduced, my name is Liz Minty. I have been with Lower Columbia Community Action in Longview, Washington, which is Southwest Washington, for 24 years. I have the unique opportunity to be the program manager over our workforce development and our financial resilience, as you can see on the slide. So what that meant for me is I've been involved with this community jobs program since it was a pilot back in 1998. And it is, again, it's one of the last transitional work programs that's still running in the country. So as they had explained earlier, we work with community jobs, a very diverse population. They are receiving TANF. Again, this comes from, they come to us females that are pregnant, female-head households, male-head households, and two-parent households. And so we really have the opportunity to work with these folks with the intent to get them employment. But it didn't take long, and it didn't take us rocket scientists to realize that just getting folks a job was not helping them become self-sufficient. And so for many years now, we've been trying to incorporate financial education and financial resilience into our workforce programs. So this is where we fit in very well with the Prosperity Agenda tasks, the pilots that they have. We were very honored to be a part of some of the design, and again, as was explained, the TPA staff came to our location on several occasions and had kind of a strategic planning session with, or a strategic design session with our staff, asking them questions about what they felt about was going on with financially with the clients we work with. I might add that in Washington State, we have the opportunity for several years now to provide financial coaching. And so all of my employment specialists have also had the opportunity to be certified as a financial coach. So again, talking about finances, I found out was, as they stated, it was almost taboo to our staff also, because of course they had their own financial struggles. They had their own lack of confidence in their own financial abilities. And so by giving them the opportunity to get the financial coaching, it then not only gave them the opportunity to go away from the case management style and to start using the coaching paradigm, but it also gave them some more confidence. So it was very interesting to hear the staff and see just even their own growth in their abilities and their confidence in talking to somebody about finances. So we then had the opportunity to have, as they mentioned, our community jobs folks were involved in some of the focus groups and enlightening to everybody, because of course, as you know, when you're talking with participants, you really do find out that these folks, even though they have lots of barriers and they have lots of struggles and issues in their life, they're just like all the rest of us, and the only difference is that their paycheck might be a little bit smaller or nothing at all. So it's been very, very exciting for us to be able to work with these Money PowerUp Packs, because again, as I said, this is something we have ingrained into our programs for several years now, but with the Prosperity Agenda giving us these ready-made PowerUp Packs, we have had a great time with them. Our participants very much enjoy and look forward to having that opportunity. We actually are structured where we have a mandatory meeting for everybody in our program once a month, and so this set up a perfect opportunity for us to use that venue. It is an hour-and-a-half venue, so it was perfect for us to introduce those at our mandatory meetings, and we've had great response with them. We also actually are working. The two generation is something that's very important to us because of the family-centered coaching also, Our community is involved, and our organization is involved in becoming a Bridges Out of Poverty community. So the two-generation approach is something that's been really important and something that our parents have really bought onto. And Alicia was talking about the take-home activities, which during the time that we have the participants during that hour and a half, we're actually preparing them to go home and have those conversations and to be the teacher. And we have had some great responses from the parents about what their children's reactions were to that. So again, you know, we're very honored to be a part of this, but it actually, in actuality, Prosperity Agenda is very much helping us to do our job and putting these kits together that make it very easy so the staff isn't spending a lot of time creating these opportunities and facilitating them, because they give us everything that we need to go right in and facilitate them.
Thanks so much, Liz. Can I ask you a little bit, you were talking about how, you know, sometimes there can be discomfort for the staff talking about people's financial lives, because maybe there isn't even that big of a difference between the financial lives of the staff and the families that you're working with. What has it been like to have these events where staff and parents and families that are part of your programs are talking about money? What's that experience like?
Well, and again, it's, as a manager, it's been wonderful for me to be able to sit back and watch the interactions of both, because again, the staff in the programs that we have, as was mentioned, it's a 6-month program. And so again, we have a contract, we have performance-based issues that we have to answer to, but at the same time, building those relationships with the participants that we're working with are really important. And so each of our employment specialists has their own unique style of building that relationship. Because again, as I said, our job is to get them a job, but to make sure that they're going to maintain that job, we provide them not only with financial background, but with life skills and parenting skills, and we do all of that under our roof. So our staff is very much bought into looking at the holistic family, not just looking at the person who's sitting at their desk. And so this, again, has really helped them to be more comfortable in understanding that, you know, we're not different. The only thing that's different is the size of our paychecks. And again, these folks, where a lot of folks look at somebody in poverty and, you know, and think of them as, you know, lesser or lazy or incapable, and it's not the truth at all. It's not the truth, and we hear some of the most brilliant things and ideas that come out of these sessions, things that I've even learned. We just recently had a barter day session, which is one of the Money PowerUp Packs, and without even realizing the questions that I was asking and the conversations we were having, I ended up documenting a whole flip chart full of places in our community that work on trade. And again, I was not even aware that that was going on, but these, you know, but the folks we're working with, they were very aware of how to barter and how to use trade and how to trade services and how to trade products. And so it was very enlightening to all of us, and we got a lot back from the participants as far as the staff.
Oh, that's really exciting to hear. Can you tell me a little bit, too, about the coaching approach and how that's been integrated into your work? I think oftentimes when we first talk to people about coaching, it's hard to think about what those conversations, how that would fit into service delivery, because the coaching conversation might not go in the direction that, you know, that particular program or those particular outcomes are tied to. So I wonder, how do you manage having coaching conversations that that the family as a parents are really directing, and what is that like for staff to be able to maybe have a lot of conversations that aren't necessarily their expertise, but to be able to work with families to set goals around those areas?
Well, and that again is exactly as one of the things I mentioned, was going away from the case management, which we've all traditionally done for several years. One example that I always use people, especially because we're talking about finances, you know, when we have to make decisions about support services, because we can provide support services, but the folks that are in our program actually get a paycheck because they work 20 hours a week, and we do have the ability to have this 6-month relationship with them when they're in the program. And so what happens is and when we first started this, it's like, okay, well, you clearly have enough money to, buy these things. So we need to talk about a budget. And the difference now is instead of saying, okay, look, this is how much you get, this is what you're spending your money on, here's what you can't do, here's what you should do, that's not how the conversations go anymore. It's not us sliding a budget across the desk and saying, here, you need to go follow this. It's allowing them to say, this is how I spend my money, this is what's important to me and my family, these are the activities that we can do or can't do. But we do point out things like we learned about pointing out things like spending leaks. So then again, it's the parents' responsibility, or not responsibility, but choice, and the family choice. And we always are including the family in the conversation, about what does the family want, what do the kids want. We actually have had the chance to have financial reality fairs, and we have had them with our Work First participants. We host one that was for all the family. And during this reality fair, the parents are typically going around to these vendors, these different booths, and they're setting up their complete financial budget because they start with nothing. And when we invited the kids in and we encouraged them to bring their kids and let the kids help make those decisions, even the families, of course, again, staff was just amazed, but the families were really very engaged in allowing the kids to say, well, I think we should have this kind of car. Or I think we don't need to have a washer and dryer because it's okay if we go to the laundromat. So again, just having that comfort of having those coaching conversations where we're not case managing them, we're letting them make the decisions, we're letting them set the goals, and then we're guiding them. And everybody knows that we can't be experts at everything. And so again, that goes back to then our resources. Our staff is very, very knowledgeable about our community. We are a rural community. We're not urban in any way, and so it is a small community, and there are limited resources that we have, but by sharing those resources, knowing those resources, and then again, not telling a person they have to use that resource, letting them make that choice.
Thank you so much for that. This is why you're one of our key partners. So I want to just, wrap up with a couple more questions about what this design process has been like. We didn't show a picture of the Money PowerUp Packs, but, at this point, we've kept them very simple. We've tried to provide, really a prototype of what we designed based on what we heard from all these organizations. And then we're making changes to that prototype as we hear back from these pilot partners who are using it. So I wonder from your experience, Liz, what it's like to be a part of that process of getting this prototype in the mail and then, testing it out and giving feedback to us and then starting to maybe see some changes as a result too. Is that different than other pilot projects you've been involved in, or how would you describe it?
Oh, absolutely different because, again, we're all very, very busy. We all have a lot of work, and in the community action, of course, we're trying to constantly meet the needs that are unmet in our community. So that means a lot of employees of a CAP agency wear a lot of hats. But I can tell you honestly that when we get our PowerUp Pack for the whole department, when they come, it's like Christmas. It's like, oh, our next PowerUp Pack is here. So, of course, we're anxious to get it open to see which one we've received. We were this is kind of the second phase of the pilot that we're doing now. So we've actually been very blessed and had the opportunity to utilize 5 different PowerUp Packs. But yes, it is something that is recognized by the staff. Something I didn't mention that's really big we utilize in our agency is our community brainstorming board. And with each PowerUp Pack, we create a new board. And these boards they're really nice leading up to, because again, we have about a month notice before we actually have the event. So this board is open to the public, anybody that comes in our doors. And so not only our clients, our community jobs clients, but our staff are encouraged to submit things to the board. People that are just waiting in our lobby for appointment are encouraged to contribute. And again, it really starts getting the conversations and the ideas going. So that's been a really fun part also of the packs. I wanted to say, when you talked about the feedback that we were able to give, there was one in particular, one of our very first ones that we did, actually it was the second one that we did, is called a spending slowdown party. And in the instructions, it encourages you to make it a party environment. So we were just happened to be, it was about Thanksgiving time, well, actually I think it was the beginning of December. And so we thought, okay, well, this is a perfect time. We'll have a little, we'll feed them and have a little Christmas party, and we'll talk about, how you start sort of slowing down the spending and watching what you're spending. And but what we did was we thought, okay, well, let's, usually once a year we'll bring in food and have, like I said, and feed them because it is during the lunch hour when we have this event. And so what we did this time is we sat down and we talked about, okay, we could do pizza, we could do a potluck, we could make the food ourselves and bring it in. We could have our Grounds for Opportunity, which is one of our culinary social enterprise that we have here at CAP. We could cater with them. But then we thought about, we're trying to teach them to slow down their spending. So what we ended up doing, we got all of these quotes for all the different costs that it would take to do these different types of meals for them. And we ended up going to the grocery store and buying bread and lunch meat and mayonnaise and chips and pickles and soda. And we listed all of this on the PowerPoint and showed the difference in cost and the difference in slowing down our spending. Instead of spending $600 to have food catered or $300 in pizza, we spent about $108. I think it was that much. It ended up being, we had broke it down even per person to show them exactly per person what those different meals would cost. And it was very empowering to like I said, again, not only the staff, but to the participants to be able to see, the difference in a choice. So if it meant the difference of somebody going to McDonald's one night or saying, hey, let's go home and make dinner and it's going to last us 2 nights, for the same cost. So that was something that we contributed that we hadn't planned on doing, and it just happened. And I know that's been kind of incorporated into the spending slowdown now. So it's been wonderful. It's been a great success. And we've really enjoyed the opportunity to contribute to the design team. And again, it's been a great opportunity for customers and staff. And again, one of the things that we're working towards, because of this Bridges Out of Poverty initiative that we have, we're looking a lot more at this two-generation approach. We have with the Financial Independence Center, which I also am the program manager of, we offer financial education that's open to the entire community. And in the last 5 years, we've also had the opportunity to get that into some after-school programs, some in-school programs. We have an event every year that's a family-centered event that revolves around finances. So we've been able to, we just had one a few weeks ago, and we incorporated one of the PowerUp Packs into this presentation. And the evening kind of looked like we had breakup sessions for different ages, so that we had age-related activities going, and then we brought everybody together for dinner and used the change counts, which is, again, one of the take-home activities. About the take-home activities, I really think that because of the two-generation approach that we're trying to take with, not only that it's not taboo to talk about with your kids, but it's important to engage your kids in the conversations that you're having and the issues that you're having, but engaging them also in activities. And so really the take-home activities, I think, is one of my favorite parts of the Money PowerUp Packs, because they are explained very clearly. They're very age-related, so no matter what age of children you have in the household, there's an activity for you. And that's been a really probably one of my most favorite parts of it.
Thank you so much. I know that we have to shift to time, so we have time for questions and answers, but I just want to land on one thing you said, which is that you had fun. And I am so excited to hear that you have fun. It's one of our design criteria, if you will. It's not the #1, but I know that if we're having fun, we're learning, and our relationships are deepening, and we're reducing stress, and we're just having fun, which we're allowed to do. And like you said, staff are very busy. They're balancing a lot of hats. So I'm just really thrilled to hear that you would have a little fun, that the staff would have fun, that the parents who are dealing with so much are having a little fun, and that, that can be a part of all of this. So I will thank you so much, Liz. We're all still here, but I'm going to pass the torch back to Courtney, and I do see that there's a few questions there already, but I'll pass it back to Courtney to facilitate.
All right. Well, thank you all. Appreciate the information you shared today. And we did have a few questions come in. One that came on early, or came in early on, which you guys might have answered this a little bit more, but could you guys talk a little bit more about the STEP sites that you talked about earlier in the family-centered coaching segment? Just a little more information on what those are.
Sure. So those are sites, I think there were about 6 across the country who were involved with workforce development and taking a whole family approach around that work. And they were funded by Kellogg. I'll see if I can share a link here to do a lot of work, but a part of that program was that each of those sites was involved in the development of family-centered coaching and receiving training on it and then applying it in their work with these various programs around the country. And so they've been really close partners and feedback around building this tool, really taking from a lot of what was working really well in these programs already and building it together into this particular approach. So I'll see if I can share a link here about the STEPS program.
Okay. And then we had a couple more come in regarding the, let's see, I think these came from after Alicia started and talking about or maybe it was about family-centered coaching. Michelle, you might have to help me out about when you were talking about this, but asking about the training curriculum and how it includes, whether it includes information on how to teach and integrate the different strategies, and then, if so, how would agencies get started, and then if not, what resources could agencies access to be trained in the concepts?
So family-centered coaching, again, I mentioned this a little bit, but I just want to make sure that it's available to everybody in the forefront of your minds. If you go to familycenteredcoaching.com, and I'll share this link here so you can just click on it, there are several resources just on that page to be able to start understanding family-centered coaching. There's a lot of resources that we've included in there too to other underlying work that's integrated into family-centered coaching. There's some assessments to help an organization start to understand whether this fits into your program and whether you want to take some steps towards family-centered coaching, the coaching approach, and the whole family work. And we are offering training at it as well. So right now, we're the training provider for family-centered coaching, and I'd love to just have a conversation to see, what part of that really makes sense for you as an organization. It might be, a longer, more in-depth process, or it might be just pieces of it. But we are also working with a number of training partners around the country. We're just completing a train-the-trainer process right now to make sure that there are other partners available around the country to be able to provide training, and especially in some specific areas like, some specialists around community action and what would this look like in community action. We're working really closely with Region 10 right now because we were already doing a couple of other projects with Region 10, which is Alaska, Idaho, Washington State, and Oregon. And so we're bringing them in really closely right now to understand what family-centered coaching would look like specifically in this environment, and to do some training with some of those folks. But then we would really love to expand that to other regions, provide other actions. If you, especially as a region, have a designated trainer or designated annual events where you bring in training, we really like to have conversations about that and see if we can come and bring some resources to that. But that's where we're at right now. And we are building some other resources that we're going to make available online this year, some video work and some other learning community resources, so that as you go through training or as you start to implement some piece of this, there's some other resources there to support that work.
Okay, great. And then another question regarding what you all talked about and how it might be similar or different to Transition to Success, which is also funded by the Kellogg Foundation.
Thank you for that question too, and I'm familiar with this approach, but I have to say we haven't done any direct work with it, so it would be hard for me to really distinguish what the differences are. I would say that if you want to have a conversation with me, if you want to send me a message or give me a contact at this email address, I can find out more, because we do work with Kellogg Foundation quite a bit. And I can definitely see where there is some crossover and maybe even where they complement each other. You know, I think that a lot of our partners are involved in some other work, whether it's, you know, mobility mentoring or using some other specific tools that are important to your work. And I think what has worked really well is for people to just have the coaching approach and the family-centered coaching structure as a larger structure to be able to do a lot of other work that fits into your particular programming. So it's hard for me to answer specifically, but I'd be very happy to follow up.
Okay. Great. Yeah, that was Michelle. So Michelle, feel free to follow up with Rachel at your convenience. All right, I think that is all of our questions, but based on a comment that we got in, I did want to just kind of make a statement. And we had someone talk about how they like the idea of including the whole family in the savings initiative. And someone said they are a fan of the family-centered coaching. And that it's similar to FDC, which is the Family Development Credential Program. And there's a curriculum out of the University of Connecticut that has the Family Development Credential. Then there's also the Strengths-Based Family Worker, and both of those, and the Strengths-Based Family Worker is out of Temple University. And both of those have very similar concepts to the family-centered coaching. And I know a lot of community action agencies utilize those approaches or trainings already. And so one thing I would say, as being trained in both FDC as well as FCC, is that FCC definitely, as it complements, it's something that I think can be wrapped into a lot of the different pieces if you're already doing FDC in your agency or some similar type program. So I think one of the great things about the family-centered coaching is that it complements a lot of the other things the agencies are doing, kind of like what Rachel talked about. And you can kind of take what works for you and modify it to adapt it to your agency and insert it where it kind of fits best to really enhance just the work that you're doing and the approach that you have with families. So, so yeah, I think that was a good point to bring up. And I saw that Rachel and Alicia sent in several different links in the chat box, so I encourage you all to check those out as follow-up, and we can post those to our Community Action Academy site as well. So Rachel and Alicia or Liz, anything else before we move on to our closing announcements?
No, thank you so much. We just really appreciate this chance to have a conversation with all of you. We put those email addresses up there because we mean it. We absolutely want to hear from you and see if we can share more or learn more about your work. And we hope we get a chance to talk again.
And I just want to offer, this is Alicia, just offering up that we are, again, in the middle of the savings pilot, piloting this approach with about 7 sites across the state, and are hoping to come out with kind of the final evaluation report in early 2019 around those parent outcomes that I alluded to early in our design process around resiliency. And we'd love to come back and share with this group, or if there's interest at that time. But we're really still learning, and but just appreciate the opportunity to kind of share our process today. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. All right, so of course you have their emails if you'd like to connect with them, and of course they're available via website and social media as well. So be sure to check out their resources and website to follow up. Then also, of course, the Community Action Partnership, we have lots of different resources. We have our Learning Community blog, which is at lcrcweb.com. So you can visit that too, and you can also subscribe to follow it to get regular updates. We've kind of revamped the way our blog looks and operates, and so we have some different fresh finds that you'll get notified about if you start to follow us, and things like that that can help to give you ideas and enhance the work that you're doing is the goal. Then we also have our CSBG TNTA Resource Center. So this has hundreds of different resources on it, both created by the partnership, some created by national partners and outside partners as well. And so encourage you to check that out. You can search just by keyword without an account, or you can create an account to be able to kind of have your own personalized information in there. Then, of course, Webinar Wednesdays. We have started a series beginning in February where we're doing a webinar every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're bringing in experts on different topics related to our learning community groups that facilitate these national webinar presentations. And so, of course, this is part of that series, and we have many more coming up through the end of September. And so you can check those out online at our communityactionpartnership.com and go to the Events tab and then Webinars. We also post a lot of our follow-up resources to the Community Action Academy. So you can join this site for free through moodle.communityactionpartnership.com. You just create an account. It gives you an account confirmation via email, and then you can log in and access follow-up resources, online discussion forums, etc. And then as far as some of the upcoming Webinar Wednesdays, like I mentioned, next week we're going to be focusing on becoming a data-centric organization using a whole agency data approach. And Paige Teagarden and Barbara Mooney are going to be presenting that. And then June 27th, we're going to be focusing on the impact and evaluation of social determinants of health. And Dr. Dana Long is going to be presenting that one. So that the one on the 13th is part of our Cultivating Data-Centered Organizations Learning Community Group, which is an open learning community group available to anyone that's interested in following that. And then the one on the 27th is part of our Health Intersections Learning Community Group, which is also an open learning community group for anyone interested in engaging in that learning. And then specifically for the Integrated Services Learning Community Group participants, as well as others throughout the nation that want to engage in this learning with the Learning Community Group, on August 1st is the next time that we're going to be focusing on integrated services for our Webinar Wednesday. And so we just nailed down our topic and presenter for that, so I wanted to go ahead and share it with you. UC Davis Extension out of California, the Center for Human Services there, does a lot of work around service integration throughout the state of California. And so they're going to be sharing some of their expertise. And a lot of it's going to be focused on staffing for service integration and looking at the multidisciplinary team approach. And so just basically learning ways to work together more efficiently to be able to provide better customer service and to achieve improved agency-wide outcomes through service integration. So encourage you all to join us for that as well. And of course, all the registration links will be in these slides that we'll share after the event. Last announcement and kind of shameless plug for our organization, we have our annual convention coming up in Denver, Colorado at the end of August. And so registration is currently open for that. I believe right now we're still offering our discounted registration, but it doesn't last much longer. So feel free to register, advertise to your agency peers, and then you can, of course, find that through our website or clicking on this slide once you receive them. And lastly, as always, feel free to reach out to the Learning Community Resource Center team for any questions or comments that you might have. Again, I'm Courtney Kohler, the Senior Associate, so I'm the third one down if you'd like to reach out to me with anything following this webinar, but anyone is available to help at any time. So we thank you all today for participating in this webinar. The recording and slides will be available after the webinar. We usually send up a follow-up email to all the participants within a week or so. So be looking out for those, and you can also find them on Community Action Academy or simply email me. Thank you all, and have a great day.